What's up, guys? Welcome to the Disschordant podcast. Today, I'm gonna be reviewing the new Steven Wilson album, The Future Bites. The album and the songs are listed in all caps, like what Linkin Park did on Living Things, by the way, which is why I shouted when I said the name of the album. Anyway, The Future Bites is Steven Wilson's fifth studio album, and I would be lying if I said that I really liked it on first listen. Not to say that I thought it was bad or that I didn't enjoy the music itself, but I was not expecting it. You see, if I had to put Steven Wilson into a genre, I would place him on the edge of progressive rock and alternative pop. And for the most part, particularly with his band Porcupine Tree, he's been more on the side of progressive rock. On The Future Bites though, Steven really leans into the alt-pop sound instead, and that's just something I was not prepared for, which is partly my fault, considering that a lot of his other solo albums also leaned into the sound. Upon more listens though, I started to appreciate it for what it is without my expectation bias, and I like the album. It's a decent, well-made album and I enjoy it. Something that he heavily put the focus on in this album were the electronic aspects, and while I'm not generally the biggest fan of that sound, it did work and he used it to serve the music rather than as a gimmick. Steven also really dialed into the ambient vibe in this album. A lot of what creates the tone and the vibe of this album is the emptiness, the wet emptiness. Steven creates a very hall-like atmosphere, and a lot of the uniqueness of the album comes through in the oversaturated reverb sound present. And while this does come in the form of just empty ambience like what's heard in the very first track on the album Unself, most of this vibe comes in the form of normal vocal, instrumental, and electronic parts soaked in reverb. And while this does work in many parts, such as in the chorus of the third track King Ghost, other times it just feels like a filler episode in an anime, and it just feels there. It doesn't add any value to the track, and it just sounds out of place. A prime example of this is in the track Follower, which is the penultimate track on the album. Between the catchy, rock-esque hooks, there's a mini 8-bar section which just makes no sense in the context of the song. While it does make sense that he needed some sort of a break between the repeating sections, the oversaturated, insanely bass-boosted electronics panning viciously between your ears creates a disconnect and is just, for lack of a better word, bad. But his seemingly random electronic noises, apart from that ear-hurting section in Follower, are used very sparingly and very well in the rest of the album. My favorite use of it is in the song Self, which is probably my favorite track from the album overall, when the random electronic noises are used as just that, noises. And he uses it at the beginning of the track to create a sharp contrast to the clean, clear vocals and instrumentation to come. It's awesome, and in my opinion, it adds a lot of value to the track. Speaking of instrumentation, the guitar work on this album is some of my favorite I've heard this past decade in any style of music. Now, that may seem incredibly stupid because there are no soaring solos or complex riffs, but I feel like the guitar serves the song in incredible fashion. Rather than playing a gajillion notes a second, the guitar parts are embellishments to emphasize the tone and the mood of the songs. Rather than playing all of the chords in a sequence every single time, the guitar is quiet for the most part and just comes in when it needs to emphasize a point. This sparing but impactful use of the guitar really hits you right in the feels, and I just absolutely love it. Even when the guitars are playing full-length riffs, it serves the vibe and it serves the song rather than just announcing its presence and adding nothing overall, which is more common than I'd like to admit in guitar-centric genres like rock and metal. If I had to describe this album in one word, I would say that it's necessary. Now, by necessary, I don't mean that the album was necessary for him to maintain his fan base or that it was necessary for him to continue his career or anything like that. I feel like every decision that Steven makes in this album is necessary. While there are obviously exceptions, it's a very minimalist album in a lot of ways. Guitar parts aren't in the songs because he felt like adding guitar to the songs. They're in the songs because they add value to the music, and that's all. Nothing more than what it needs to get the job done. As I said earlier, I'm generally not the biggest fan of electronic sounds, but in this album I like them. The electronic sounds, rather than being like like they are in dubstep, are used as just another instrument. They're used when they're needed, when they add value to the song, and that's it. And when they are used, they add layers to the sound, giving it that much more depth and making it that much more interesting. And while a lot of people may dislike this simple approach, I personally found it quite refreshing, and stripped to its bones, the album at its core is solid. Now, just to be clear, I'm not saying that this album is generic. There's a big difference between something being simplistic and something being generic. I mean, there were a few moments in this album where I did find the ideas and sections bland and generic. And a great example of this is in the song Man of the People. Now, overall, Man of the People is a nice ballad with some decent sections. I don't love or hate it particularly, but there's one repeating idea which, rather than feeling simplistic, honestly felt lazy. It's kind of this idea which just keeps repeating in so many different iterations and variations that it feels like filler space. As a listener, you kind of feel like just skipping past those parts and moving to the actual heart of the song. It feels lazy, it feels uninterested, it feels devoid of emotion. And while that calm, cold, emotionless tone of Steven's voice does work in a lot of places, such as in the track Personal Shopper, on this track, it's just badly done. I don't like it. Now, it's time to give out album awards. First, we have the Slow Burn Award. Now, the Slow Burn Award is given to songs that aren't very appealing on first listen, but then become one of your favorites, and that award without a doubt goes to King Ghost. When I first heard this song, I found the hook obnoxious. There are no lyrics, it's just Steven singing a high falsetto melody, and it kind of felt like something that he just got bored and came up with in 30 seconds while he was on the toilet one day. But after listening to it for the second and third time, the melody actually makes a lot of sense in the context of the backing electronic arpeggio, and I really enjoy it. The high dragging melody soaked in reverb along with the glassy tone of the arpeggio creates a very futuristic sound, kinda like something out of a sci-fi movie, and I absolutely love it. Now, there are still parts of the song which I still dislike, like the mini bridge section, post the second chorus and after the last chorus, which is just so painful to listen to after the immersive and powerful chorus sections, and they literally add no value to the song. But overall, this was a song that I didn't like when I first heard it, and now I do like it, so I feel like it deserves the Slow Burn Award. Next, we have the Innovation Award. This is pretty self-explanatory. The award is given to the song that tries a lot of different things. Some work, some don't, but it creates for a very interesting song. This award goes to Personal Shopper. Personal Shopper. It's a weird song. The first couple of minutes sound fairly standard for the album with the reverby vocals and the futuristic electronic synth backing. But past that, this song just takes a turn for the better? Worse? Better. Better? A bunch of women just start singing this upbeat hook in complete contradiction to the vibe established by Steven's initial verses, and it's completely unexpected. It's quite odd, but I personally like it. After that, it becomes even weirder with some stacked vocals and this descending chord harmony which is super interesting but so weird to hear at the same time. And the lyrics are so strange. Consumer of life, hold my hand, extend your rights. It's the power to purchase to excess that sets you apart and can give you the ultimate high. What is this? And that's not all. That isn't even all. It goes into this weird ambient section where this British lad with a deep voice starts listing consumer products interspersed with some bright acoustic guitar parts. It's a very weird song. But hey, I respect him for trying whatever that song is. It's an adventure, and it definitely deserves this award. The award for most memorable song ironically goes to a song called 12 Things I Forgot. The song is very solid. It centers around a simple acoustic chord progression, and what seems like a standard pop progression takes a turn with a more Porcupine Tree-esque chord change from F sharp minor to F major 7 at the end. The song also contains strong melodies, and the instrumentation is so well done. The last chord change, the one I talked about earlier, is emphasized by a wide descending piano line, and it gives the chord change that much more emphasis and importance. This track is hands down the best produced on the album, all the way from the mix, which has a lot of depth, to the use of effects, to the tones and timbres of the instruments. Next, we have the award for the least memorable song, which is the award that goes to the most lacking and the most boring song on the album, and that goes to Man of the People. As I said earlier, it's a nice song, but the repeating ideas just lack the substance that a song needs to keep a listener's attention, and it's structured so badly. After 4 nice lines, it's weirdly quiet and overly ambient for 4 bars. The listener gets bored. Then Steven comes back with 2 more nice, well-harmonized lines. The listener gets interested again. 4 more bars of ambience. It's like he decided that the song has to reach 4.5 minutes in length, but he only had 2 minutes of material, so instead of writing 2 more minutes of material, he just had these sections of random silence kind of linger in between the actual parts. It kind of reminds me of that poetry book which Gabby Hanna wrote, where over half of the book was pretty much empty space because the publishers wanted the book to be a certain length and she couldn't write that much material. Except that Steven can do whatever he wants. He's not tied down by any publishing entity. It's honestly super disappointing because the melodies and instrumentation that was properly written was really well written and it could have made a really good song if it wasn't for all of the nonsense in between. Man of the people, congratulations on an award well deserved. Next up, we have the Yawn Award. And the Yawn Award goes to Count of Unease. The Count of Unease has nice melodies and piano, but the song just does not progress. By the 2-minute mark, I had already fallen asleep at 11 in the morning. Why this isn't a 50-second song is beyond me, because the song only has 50 seconds of material which is split into 2 sections and they just get repeated over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. Oh, and of course, it wouldn't be a Steven Wilson song without random ambient noises soaked in a juicy ton of reverb in between the sections, so there's that too. Okay, I need to calm down. And finally, the award for the best song on this album goes to Self. Self is the best song on this album in my opinion, primarily because it's very focused. There's no unnecessary filler ambience and ear-bleeding reverb. There's no mind-numbing repetition and weird electronic noises that don't make any sense. It's a very concise song and there's nothing that doesn't need to be there, but at the same time, it's not empty or devoid of substance and emotion. It's the perfect song for this album, and if all of the songs on this album met this standard, the album would get a perfect 10 on 10 from me. But not all of the songs on this album are Self, and while there are other songs on this record that do reach this quality standard, a lot of them don't, which brings me to my final rating of the album. All songs considered, I would give The Future Bites by Steven Wilson a solid 6.5 out of 10. I think it's safe to say that Steven tried a lot of things on this album, and as a result of that, there are some songs that are lackluster and are just not very good, but at the same time, there are many songs that work and that embody what Steven was trying to do with this album. It's a solid record, and I personally think that it's one of his better solo albums. So that's it for now, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed the episode, and if you did, make sure to subscribe to the podcast on Spotify or Apple Music or wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you're listening on YouTube, subscribe to the channel. I'm gonna make a lot more album reviews in the future, so if there's an album that you want me to check out, let me know in the comment section down below. And while you're at it, I wanna know, what do you think of this record? Good? Bad? Ugly? Anyway, that's all for now. I'll see you next time.